All right. Hi, guys. I know some of you, but kind of take a second to introduce myself for some of you that I don't know. I am an evaluator in the Office of the Registrar. I've been at CSU for a little over 4 years. And and I also live down in South Florida with my husband and our dog. Relocated down here in December. And yeah, as far as charcuterie goes, I kind of randomly got into it in December or so. My husband and I wanted one for Christmas, and they were all out of stock of the pre-made ones at Publix. So I was like, well, I guess I can figure it out. And then started making them for kind of just hanging out with friends. We always do a bachelor watch night every Monday, so I would make one for bachelor night every Monday. And then in about late February, early March, some of my friends encouraged me to start selling my boards. So I kind of started a little side hustle with a charcuterie business, and just slowly growing. I've had a decent amount of orders over the last few months. So yeah, it's just something I kind of randomly started and figured out that I loved. So I figured I would kind of take you guys through what making a board looks like. I don't have like any slides or anything. I figured I'll reposition my camera in a second and kind of take you through the whole process. Let me see if I can. I was going to try to share some photos with you guys, but I'm not. Jeff, I may need your help because I'm not super tech savvy and I don't know how to share photos.
Okay, you have to click the share.
Okay.
And then it's going to ask you if you want to share a particular window or a monitor.
Okay, so just share my screen. Let me get them pulled up then.
Yeah.
And I'll give you guys kind of an idea of some of the boards that I do. Let's see. All right. Are you guys able to see that?
It's coming.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so I am fortunate enough to have a good friend who is a photographer. So she did like a little photo shoot with some of my boards a while back. Sorry, I'm clearly not tech savvy and I've lost my. Here, let's try this. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, let's try this again. Thank you for bearing with me.
We support you, Melissa.
Thank you. I am definitely not the tech savvy one in my household. But yeah, so these are kind of the different like boards that I like to make. I kind of alternate cheeses and meats, fruits, all of that type of thing. So yeah.
Melissa, are these ones that you've made?
Yes, these are all ones that I've made.
Those are incredible. They really are like magazine worthy.
Thank you. The pictures look very good because I have a friend who's a great photographer who did the photos. So she made them look amazing. But all right. So as far as like when I start a board, there you go. As you can see, I'm propped up on books and stuff over here. So, but when I start a board, I kind of put cheese as the center because like who doesn't love cheese? And this is more cheeses than I probably would normally put on a board this size, but I figured we could have options. I like to start, the first thing I do is I make like kind of my focal point at the center of the board. I typically go with either brie or a large wedge cheese like this one. I've kind of pre-cut it, but you can see it's like in that shape. This is actually a new cheese to me. I think it's called a promontory cheese. Typically I'll do like a Toscano cheese that's kind of like this wedge. That's one of my favorites to go through. But that's kind of my first step whenever I'm creating a board, is creating a focal point. And when I'm using this, or when I'm using a wedge like this, I try to make pretty even slices. I pre-slice them because I used to leave full wedges on my boards, and I learned that no one really wanted to go in and be the first one to break up the cheese. And so I found that when you pre-slice them, people are more likely to go for that cheese. This is my go-to cheese slicer knife. It's a little wire cutter. And it's like $10 on Amazon, and it's the best thing ever. So yeah, with these, I just kind of slice. I wouldn't normally slice on the board, but don't have a lot of space for a cutting board in here. I slice them just evenly and keep them still in like the shape of the wedge, if you will. And I'll show you guys how, kind of why I try to keep them in order. And the last part of it, I keep larger than the rest of them. So these are all fairly like bite-sized. They might be a little larger than bite-sized pieces. But this last one, I keep a little thicker so that it can like hold the weight of the cheese. And I have to do it facing me, and then I'll turn it for you guys. The reason I do that is because I kind of lean the cheese this way. And so it gives it like a good base, if you will, to hold it up. There we go. So kind of put this, and typically, as I build the board, I'll put something behind this as well to hold it, to make sure it's like fully stable. But when I use this as the center, I kind of make like a little, I'm going to go ahead and put something behind it right now so it doesn't fall. We'll put some chocolates behind it to hold it up. I probably won't leave them there. I might change it up and put some fruits behind there, but for now we'll just hold it up with some chocolates. But to kind of create just a little dimension and like visual interest to it, I'll make kind of like an S shape, or like a little kind of river, if you will, with it. And there's no real like science behind it. Just kind of curve it as you like it. You can kind of see it's not quite perfect, and it makes it a little off center, but it just adds a little dimension to it. And as we build, it'll kind of break up the different shapes and stuff on the board. Side note, I forgot to say, if you guys have any questions throughout this, feel free to stop me. I may not catch the chat, but I will look back at the chat at the end, of course. And yeah, so that's just starting the board. And before I go on, I'll go through some of the cheeses I have here. I realized I didn't do that. So this one, like I said, is a promontory cheese. I think it's similar to cheddar. In my opinion, it kind of has that taste. But it's a newer cheese to me. Another cheese that's similar to this shape that I use a lot is called Toscano. And then I've got brie here. This is just half of a round of brie. This is, and some of these are pre-sliced, manchego. That's a sheep's milk cheese. It's got a little bit of a different taste. And then this, which is already cut up, just because I didn't know how much time we would have, is Gouda. It comes in a wax like this, obviously, and the whole rind is filled. And I'll go through how I cut that for you guys. So I've got Gouda, rosemary crusted, or it's herb crusted goat cheese right here. This is a cranberry white cheddar. It's delicious and it's an Aldi find. So, and then this is an apricot Stilton cheese. You can kind of see it's got apricots in it. It's kind of it's a more crumbly cheese. But those are just some of my go-tos. Some of the other cheeses that I'll use a lot are your traditional cheddar. What else? It's losing me. Havarti. Another goat cheese I love to use is like blueberry. Costco has blueberry lemon goat cheese. Trader Joe's has blueberry vanilla goat cheese, but some sort of blueberry goat cheese. And also the Boursin cheeses, like the round Boursin, really soft cheeses are really good. Most of the cheeses I'll get at Trader Joe's, which I know you guys don't have up there, or Publix. It has similar selection as Trader Joe's. Aldi has some good finds. Like I said, this cranberry cheddar is from Aldi and this brie. And Costco or like Sam's Club is always good, but of course they're larger amounts. So going on to the brie, which I typically include on all my boards. This is a half a round. I already cut it in half. But I will use my wire cutter. You can use a regular knife as well. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of half it again. I'm sorry if my lighting's not the greatest, guys. And I'll cut this half round into 8 pieces. So if you have a full round of brie, I typically cut it up into 16 pieces because that tends to be more individual servings. And if you use a wire knife, a lot of the creamy cheeses, it's really good to just kind of like wipe it off in between every few cuts. Kind of helps with getting those clean cuts. And these up real quick. And a little trick if you're cutting brie, it can be a little finicky because it is a softer cheese. And so if you throw it in the freezer for a little bit right before, it hardens and it makes it a little bit easier to cut. A recent trick that I found. And so you'll have, as you guys can see, 8 little pieces. And sometimes I'll make them, if I'm using it as the center of my board, I'll make them into a circle. But right now, since we've got this cheese at the center, I'm just going to fan them out on the side. And I'll and sometimes you have to play around with it because some of the pieces end up being a little larger than others. So you can play around with what kind of visually looks the best as far as which piece is going where. There's no real science. You can't really mess it up. So I'll do a little kind of like half circle, fan it out a little bit. I'm going to push it together a little bit more. And then just put 2 last pieces up like this. So I know my light is not the greatest, but you can kind of see I put it all like that. And then I've got 2 pieces. Let's see if I can move this one. Got 2 pieces right there. So that's pretty typical is how I'll style the brie. And then with manchego, that's a really fun one to style. to get like this one, it's a little bit of a harder cheese. And so you kind of want to cut them in as similar sizes as possible. A little trick, which I already did it to prep, but if you're trying to get equal size slices, you just use a fork to mark out on the cheese little holes, kind of give you a slicing guide. And so again, I'm going to use my trusty wire cutter. Oh, let's see, there's some questions. The first cheese type, this is, it's called a promontory cheese. It's actually from this company called Beehive Cheese. And like I said, it's kind of new to me. I've never used it before, but it was Trader Joe's like monthly spotlight this month, so I wanted to try it. But the one that I almost always use that's the same shape of this is called Toscano. And then Brie, and this one is Manchego. And this Manchego I actually found at Aldi. And then, yes, it's this company, Rachel does have ones that are the espresso crusted ones. And then, yeah, I like the cheeses I like to place the cheeses first. Just because for me, I find the cheeses to be like more of the focal point. So I place all of them first and then kind of build around it. Okay, so I'm going to slice this one up. Like I said, I kind of already marked them. And with this, espresso lavender sounds really good. I need to find that somewhere. And just keep in mind with your cheeses, some of the rinds you can eat. Brie, of course, you can eat the rind. This one is a wax rind, so you cannot eat it. So this little cutting the last piece is always, that broke a little bit. So we'll just discard this piece. But this one I wouldn't put on the board because you can't eat that rind. So with Manchego, or really any cheese that's in this wedge shape, a fun way to display them is, I don't really know what the technical term for it is, but you keep it in the wedge shape and alternate the cheeses. I'll show you guys when it's on the board. But you just cut them and alternate them, and it creates it just looks really pretty, and it's super simple. You don't have to cut it in any fancy way. This one, I'm just going to put back here, and I just line it up. And again, that is one of those shapes that has like a really high impact on the look of the board, and it's super simple to do. You just slice it and alternate them. And it'll stay up. That's okay. We'll call it a bow tie, as Jane said. And it'll stand up a little bit better too once we have things around it. All right. I'll do the goat cheese next. Goat cheese is going to be, I missed some of this cheese. Just placing those. Goat cheese is probably the messiest cheese to cut because it's a super, super soft cheese. So with that one, like I was saying earlier, when you cut softer cheeses, it is good to take like a paper towel or a towel and just wipe it off in between, especially if you get ones like a blueberry goat cheese where it's just purple everywhere. If you wipe it off in between them, then it makes the color stay better. But this one, the herbs are kind of in it, on top. And with goat cheese, I'll just cut them, all the slices, roughly the same width. Of course, I'm just kind of eyeballing it as you guys see. And then especially because goat cheese is pretty hard to get to stand up. It's, it doesn't have a lot of form. It's pretty flimsy. I just tend to put that on one of the outside curves of the board. And it might break as you put it on there, as it's doing for me right now. And that's fine. You just kind of find different ways to get it to stand up. And yeah, I just kind of stack it like that. Nothing super fancy. I'll go with the curve of the board. But it is goat cheese is very messy. And you can use really any type of board. I have a ton of different shapes of boards. The round ones are just typically my kind of go-to. All right, and then I'll cut up this cranberry cheddar. It comes in a circle. Every cheddar is different. Most cheddars come in like rectangles or squares. But for this one, I'm going to cut it similar to how I cut the brie. And it's going to fall everywhere. It just did. And any cheese, this one's a little bit softer. Most cheeses that have fruit in it are, because it's the liquid from the fruit. So again, with like I said, with any of the softer cheeses, just wipe your knife, whether it's a wire knife or a regular knife, in between every few cuts, and that'll kind of help cut down on the messy factor. And this one kind of crumbled on me. So these are a little bit bigger slices. And of course, normally I would do this on a cutting board. But my desk is kind of I had to finagle my desk to work for this. So I'm actually cutting these, since they're a little bit bigger, I'm cutting them into smaller slices than I did the brie. Cutting them about like this size or so. Just little wedges. That's good. This is kind of a messier cheese as well. And for this one, I'm actually going to scoot the brie down just a little bit. Yes, Cindy, I can create a list, and I can go through them at the end too. I can go through and talk about the different cheeses as well. This, I'm actually going to move the manchego over here. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm probably going to display this in a similar-ish way to how the brie is displayed. And so if I'm displaying two things similarly, I try not to have them right next to each other, just to alternate the board. And so I'm going to move the goat cheese up a little bit, get that to stay, and then move this cranberry cheddar down here, and just kind of fan it out similarly to basically a smaller version of how the brie is displayed. I'm probably not going to use all of this. We'll just use a few pieces of that, just so we can kind of go through and show different cheeses. And then, so this Gouda, like I said, I pre-cut it. It's going to come, of course, a full like wedge. But basically what I do is I cut out the cheese and I leave the rind on it. This is a wax rind, so we wouldn't eat it. And I leave a little bit of the cheese on the rind as well, just to make the rind a little bit heavier. And I'll place that on the board. And then I cube all of the cheese that I took out. I'll cube that, just cut them up into little cubes, and display it in the rind. And I'll turn the board for you guys to see.
Melissa, I don't think you have to turn the board. Like, we can see it great like it is.
Perfect. Okay.
I don't want all your cheese to fall over.
Okay. But yeah, this is just it's kind of a more visually interesting way to display cubed cheese. Sometimes I'll put just plain cubes without a rind on the board, but it's just a fun way to display it. And typically when I do this, I don't actually use the full wedge of cubes of cheese. I'll fill it. We actually kind of broke into this cheese last night, so we don't have a full thing today. And as you can see, they're falling over. So sometimes I'll wait to fill it until I have stuff around it to kind of catch it. And just because of space, I'm not actually going to put the Stilton cheese on it, but just so you guys can kind of know how I would style that, since it's a softer, crumbly cheese, what I would do is this is the only exception that I do as far as leaving a wedge on the board. What I would do is I'll take a cheese knife or a regular knife and just kind of break it apart a little bit into little crumbles and just crumble it on the board. And so and then I put a cheese knife on top, and that way people can just kind of grab it and place it on a cracker, whatever. But that's how, as you can kind of see, it's crumbled, but it's still in the full wedge. So that's how, with a crumbly cheese, or even like blue cheese is a similar texture. That's how I would do that one. All right. Now we're going to switch gears from the cheeses and move on to meat. Ooh, I may need to go and buy more boards from TJ Maxx and Marshalls. Although I think my husband may bar me from buying too many more wooden boards pretty soon.
So Melissa, when you get the boards, like where do you usually get them from? And Jane had asked too, like, do you include the board in the cost? Like it comes with it whenever you do a board?
So to answer both of those, I get a lot of my boards from Target. Like this one is actually a wooden, I think it's technically a wooden charger, like a charger plate. Yeah, I get a lot of them from Target. I've gotten some on Amazon. And then Marshalls, TJ Maxx, Home Goods are good places to find them as well. And when I actually sell a board, I do not include the wooden boards. They're blocked in my kitchen right now, but they're disposable, like palm leaf bamboo boards. And so I use that. It's a similar texture. I have a palm leaf bamboo little cup right here, if you can kind of see it. And so that's what I do with any boards that I sell. That way no one has to worry about getting a board back to me. It's theirs, to serve off of and then dispose of when they like. So the wooden boards I use purely for just like when I make it for us or take it with me to a friend's house or something of that nature. I think, did that answer all of those questions?
Yes, you've answered everything.
Okay. But I do have an option to where people could like rent wooden boards as an add-on if they like, or buy them. Because of course most of them come from Target, so it's pretty easy to replicate that as long as it's the same season. Yeah. So with the charcuterie meat, everyone has like, of course, their own preferences, kind of the same way it comes with cheeses. But for me, I tend to use salami. This is just a plain salami, but you can also get like the pepper coated salami. There's another meat that I'll use sometimes. It's a pork based meat. It's capicola, I think is the name you pronounce it. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. But most of the meats that I use are all pork based meats. I actually don't eat pork, so I can't eat any of the meat, but they look really pretty. And so I'll use plain salami today. And then the other meat that I use a lot is prosciutto. I'll go through prosciutto second because it is the most finicky to work with, depending on how thinly or thickly it's sliced. But with salami, there's a couple ways you can style it. My favorite way is to make what I call, this sounds really nerdy, a salami river. And the way you kind of do that is you'll take your piece of salami, fold it in half, and then fold that in half again. And you'll get this little quarter fold. And then you'll take another one, fold it in half, fold it in half again. And then hopefully you can see this. I feed them in to each other. And then continue that pattern. I'll do a couple more so you guys can kind of see the pattern that it makes. And so it just creates a little like kind of river pattern.
Honeycomb.
Yeah, honeycomb. We'll go with that.
I want to call that honeycomb.
Everyone calls it a salami river. It looks like a river when it's on a board. But yeah, so
I was wondering how you did that one.
Yes, you just fold it in together, and you can do it another way where you don't fold them in together. That way is definitely easier, and I'll show you guys that way as well. But because folding them in together is definitely more time consuming. Yes, Jane needs to be naming all of my boards for sure. I'll do a couple more with this. For me, once the length of the salami honeycomb gets too much for me to hold, then it makes it a little difficult to piece together. Okay. And I'm going to put that right back here, kind of lean it up against the goat cheese. It probably will open up and kind of fall apart a little bit like that. Once we add some crackers or fruit in front of it, it'll not do that. The other way, sorry, I'm trying to keep up with all the comments too. So the other way that's more simple is you're still going to fold them in half and then in another half again, but instead of weaving them into each other, just placing them like this, it just makes it a little less kind of tight looking. I'll do a few more of those real quick. Yeah, that one's a lot simpler just because you don't have to worry about.
Melissa, I have two questions while you're doing that.
Yeah.
One, the comment is, it seems very therapeutic.
Yes.
But two, the way that you're folding the meats that way, it seems to me when someone goes to take one, does it all fall apart?
Yes and no. Of course, like as people are eating off the boards, it does start to, the design of it, of course, is going to break down.
Maybe when you're done, you can eat one for us so we can see.
So I will say though, since the meat, of course, has that, like, you know, it's salami. It's got some grease to it. They do start to like stick together a little bit. So as everything is warms up a little bit and isn't as cold, I just took everything right out of the fridge, of course. It will start to stick together a little bit. So it does break down, of course, but it does also stick together a little bit as everything's kind of compressed together. And as far as placing the meat goes, I just kind of place it wherever my heart desires, wherever I think it looks good. And trying to go through all the different ways to fold salami because there's a bunch. But I also want to be cognizant of our time. And another way similar when you're folding it in quarters, instead of weaving it together and instead of alternating it, you can also just fold them like this, back to back, just a different style. And then they just kind of look like that. And I would, let's see, I'll probably place it, we'll maybe go with right here. This is, normally I would only do like 2 bunches of meat on the board, but just wanting to kind of show you all the different ways to do it. The other way, which is a really fun way to display salami, is a roast. There's a bunch of different ways how to do it. A lot of people, and one of the ways that I do it is you can do it on a wine glass. But one way that I've started to do lately that I really like, a little bit different. So you lay all of your salami kind of out like that. And then you fold this whole thing in half. And then you just roll it really tightly together. And you try to keep it as in line with each other as possible. And this makes just a tight little rose that you can, I'll probably put this just right next to the brie. We'll do that. And let's see. So serving, of course, I definitely don't recommend serving it just with hands. Cheese knives are really great. I should have brought some of mine in here. Whoops. Cheese knives are great. Toothpicks are also good, especially if you're going for disposable and easy, so you don't have to clean it up. And small forks are good as well, especially for like the cubed cheeses or even like some of the fruits. So all of those are really great options. Just kind of whatever you have is tends to be what I do. Yeah. So that's all the different ways I style salami. Yes, those tiny silver forks and tongs are really great. Yeah, those are a great option. And so the other one that I use the most, prosciutto, like I said, super, super finicky because sometimes you can get prosciutto that has papers in between each slice. Sometimes it's like this where it is not. But what I'm going to do is make a little fan with it, and it looks harder than it actually is. It's actually fairly simple to do. And so with that, what you're going to do is fold. We're going to turn it this way. Fold your salami in half. And you do have to move kind of slowly because, or I said salami, it's prosciutto. You do have to fold it kind of slowly because it is just a thinner sliced meat. So if you fold it in half and then just take off of the next slice really carefully. And then you just kind of start to fold it in, hopefully you guys can see, fold it into itself, alternating like this, just creating little fans. Sorry, I went too high with that. And similar sizes of folds. And then what I do to make it kind of stick is I just press in the bottom of it, and that kind of makes it fan out, and then it also makes it stick together on the bottom. And they're not all going to be perfect, but so I'll make a few of those. I'll show you guys again. So I'll fold it in half, hold my breath while I pull it apart, and then just fold it into itself, make little folds, push it together on the bottom, and then I'll get a little fan, and I'll make one more of these. I typically make these in sets of 4. I'll do one more. Try not to go too fast. And it will break apart sometimes like it just did. So we're going to redo it. Okay. And push it together. Not sticking together as much. Yeah, so you've got 4 little of these fans, and what I do is I like to stack them with each other. And typically if I have one that is kind of the worst looking one, which I always do, then I'll put that on the back of the stack to kind of hide it. Doing it this way. And so I'll stack those and just kind of place them in a little crevice on the board. Like so. And then you've got like little, let me do this so you guys can see. Kind of just like little ribbons down the board. All right, so that is, and I'm going to move this little row of salami actually down here. Yeah, so that is, sorry, I'm a perfectionist, and so they take me like a little bit longer than they probably should to make because I move things around to make sure they look the best. So I'm moving things around right now. Okay, so that's it for meat. I pretty much try to do cheese, then meat, and then place everything else. Place like the bigger things. And so, yes, I do use gloves when I'm making it for the public or, paying customers. This, my husband gets to just munch down on when he gets home. So yeah. So, but yes, I do use gloves when I'm making them for others. And then I like to always have a little dish of honey, which is why I have this little bowl And I kind of just gauge where to place it. I think today I'm going to place it in the little curve of this cheese. That's the fun thing about like when you curve this cheese, you make little crevices to put things in. And so this is just typical like organic honey. And you can also get mini jars of honey that are really fun to use on boards. Just depends on what you're wanting to do. But since that bowl is kind of a bigger thing, I'll place that. And then there's crackers. Of course, we gotta have crackers with our cheese. I kind of go back and forth. I use a bunch of different types of crackers. Sometimes I'll actually get baguettes and throw them in the air fryer and make little like crostinis. And those are really nice as well. You can also get the like water crackers, entertainment type crackers. I think these are from an entertainment pack. These are, unfortunately, they're Trader Joe's find, but they're little like fig and olive crisps. They're a little bit more like an artisanal cracker. So I like to throw like kind of your basic crackers and something a little bit fancier. These are a really good Costco find. They are everything but the bagel crisps. So they've got everything but the bagel seasoning on these little bagel crisps. And they are a huge hit. I know, Jane, I want the carbs too. I can't eat gluten, so I actually can't eat any of these, but I hear these are really good. I've never tried them, but everyone raves about them. But yeah, so those are the crackers I'm going to do today. And this is where these bigger crackers, I'm actually going to place on the back, and I'm going to remove these chocolates that I use to hold up the cheese, and I'll put them back over here, and I'll use these kind of as a good base to hold up the crackers or the cheese. And I'll just kind of fan these around the cheeses and fit those in there. Let's see. And then I'm going to take these fig and olive crisps, and I try to go back and forth, kind of explaining my thought process behind where I place things. Just visually, like I try not to put crackers next to crackers or similar colors to similar colors. So I'll put these down here and just kind of place them around the cheeses, fit them into little crevices. And then these little bagel crisps, I'm going to, and I try to always lean them up against something so that they're not like gonna fall as soon as someone pulls something. And these, I'm gonna curve these around a little bit, again, just to create a little bit of alternating shapes and stuff to the board. So I'll curve these around. And I might place some of these extra crackers or crisps on there later. I may not add more. That's kind of a personal preference as far as how much or how little of, certain items you want to add to your board. And then as far as outside of your cheese, meat, and crackers, I like to add fruits. Just kind of depends on what your favorite fruits are. I've got grapes, strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries. And then I also use dried fruits, but I typically put those on last. And then I'll place nuts on the board as well. And I'm kind of grabbing all of these because, especially like the fruit and the nuts, kind of just place all of those on it at once as I like try to alternate different styles and everything. Grapes, you can leave them in like small little bunches like this. That tends to be easy to just place them on there. And so at this point, it's just kind of a fill in the blank, fill in the space with whatever you like. Again, fruits, nuts. Some people like olives. We're not big olive fans in our house, so I don't put them on boards that we eat. But that's also a great. Most people do like them, and so that's a great option to add onto your board. That kind of gives you that like saltiness. Let's see. Put some blueberries. We'll put some right here. We always have tons of blueberries in our house because our dog eats them. And so I tend to always put those on my boards just because they're always around. Yeah, and I try to fill each section as much as I can because that just kind of creates a really full kind of overflowing look for the board. So we'll do that. I'll add like a little bit of raspberries left. I'm going to add those right here in the front. And you just kind of stack them however it looks prettiest, whatever you like. Yeah, throw those there. These are a few of the straggler pieces of cheese that I guess I missed when I was cutting the wedge. Let's see. Oh, with the strawberries, and you can do this with any, with a lot of fruits like kiwis. And you can do it with bigger fruits, oranges, anything like that. But one thing that I've started to do with strawberries, which is really fun, is cutting, I don't really know what to call them, like maybe little stars. And so we'll let Jane name this. What you kind of do is put your knife at an angle and alternate going up and down. It's like a crisscross motion. And if you do a smaller fruit like a strawberry, you'll need kind of like a smaller paring knife. And then did not cut all the way through on one section. This one may not be very good, but okay, that one was a little rough, but it makes that typical. You'll see it on a lot of fruit trays. It's kind of hard to see, but that shape, the light is not the greatest. But that's just a fun little thing if you want to do with strawberries. I don't always do that with them. I actually just kind of started playing around with that. Again, ideally, I would do all of this on a cutting board. I probably shouldn't be cutting this into my hand. It's not the safest. Yes, a basket-shaped strawberry. Yeah, Rachel, I think we might be eating this board for dinner tonight. It will go in the fridge and come out when we're off work. And so I cut the strawberries in half. You can leave them whole. That's just my personal preference is to cut them in half. And I'll save these little basket strawberries for like just as a little pizzazz later on at the end of the board. And then let's see, right here, since I've got a lot of like red, I'm going to break it up with some pistachios. And as far as nuts go, I like to use pistachios. I also like to use walnuts. I've used cashews as well. Again, personal preference, whatever you really enjoy. So I'll put a few there. I kind of use the nuts as a way to fill in the spaces. And so we've got a lot of red there. I'll go back in with the blueberries right here. in just a little bit. And then this is about the time that I will start to add some dried fruit. So we really like dried apricots. Apricots, how do you say? And then these dried orange slices, they're dried and sweetened. And these I've gotten from these I always get from Trader Joe's. I'm sure you could probably find something similar at Publix, but these are really good and they add just like a nice pop of color to the board. So I'm actually going to add these back here. Again, just to kind of add a little bit different of, actually, I changed my mind. No, I'm going to stick with my original thought. So I'm going to add those back here. I'm going to break up the blue and red that we've got going on up here with some in between the salami and the raspberries. And a few more apricots. Just kind of pile them on as you see fit. The oranges fell, which that will happen. There we go. And then I'm gonna add some more pistachios just right here in this little empty space. If you have like really random like holes in the board that you're trying to fill, that is a good, like one thing that pistachios or walnuts, whatever nut you're using, is really good to fill the space with. I'm going to take the little basket strawberries. I have a little hole back here and put them there. And then chocolates, which these are delicious. They are, I find them at Costco. They're Sanders brand dark chocolate sea salt caramel truffles. They're amazing. But whatever, again, any of your personal preference chocolate. I just kind of add them to maybe some, like, I guess the best way to describe it, like a shorter section of the board. Right here, there's a little dip, not quite a hole, but a little dip in between the blueberries and the bagel crisps. So I'll add one right there. I'm going to add one right here on the front of the board because there's a little bit of an empty space. Let's see. And then we'll put two maybe right back here just to add a little something. And there's a little empty space right here. So I'm going to add another orange. And let's just throw a third chocolate in there because why not? And yeah, that's pretty much it as far as making the board. Let me move this up out of the way so you can see it. One thing that I really love to do is to add a garnish to a board. So I'm out of rosemary. Typically I'll use rosemary as a garnish just to add a little bit of a green to the board. Sometimes I'll use flowers. I'll use edible flowers, but I do not have any on hand right now. So you can use baby's breath if you would like. They're not edible. You could garnish with them. I'm not going to, just since they aren't edible. But if you want to add a little bit of garnish, a fresh herb, or an edible flower is really pretty to throw on there just as a little something to add on there. I'm going to attempt to hold this a little bit closer to the screen so you can see. It might help. So you can kind of see there's a lot of alternating stuff. That's not the right word. There's a lot of different things on the board. I'm trying to use a different word. But yeah, and it just, I like to use just a bunch of different stuff. It creates a lot of dimension, a lot of things to it. So kind of on that note, how many items do we put on the board it is really personal preference, and I kind of eyeball it. Typically, these are probably more oranges than I would put on a board that someone orders, because they're super sweet, but they look really pretty. And for the chocolates, I actually would probably normally only put three or four chocolates on the board. Everything else, I really just kind of eyeball it to for not necessarily our personal preferences, but what I've kind of seen with viewing my friends eat the boards, and where I've heard feedback from customers. And because I moved it, things are falling. But I would say typically I'll do kind of 3 bunches of meat, maybe a little bit longer than we did here because we've got multiples, but probably 3 bunches of like salami, or 2 bunches of salami, a bunch of prosciutto, like the ribbons, and then sometimes I'll add the rows, just depending on kind of how the board looks. And as far as cheese goes, for the center of it, I'll typically use the full wedge of whatever I'm using as the center, whether that be a round of brie or a long wedge like this. I'm not exactly sure about the sizes because I typically just look for, I kind of know what the price on the size of wedges that I'll use is. So I'm going to put these oranges back because they keep falling. And like this wedge, goodness, I should have looked at the ounces. This was like a $5 wedge, I think. So I don't know how, maybe less than half a pound for sure in the center. Let's see. But yeah, I kind of keep it to like what looks like it could feed a few people, if that makes any sense. And it again is gauged. Yeah.
Sorry, someone asked how many people would this tray serve, and what would you charge for this tray?
So this tray would probably serve. This would probably serve 6 to 8 people is what I would actually. So last night I brought the same board to my friend's house. We were hanging out, and there was 7 of us, and we pretty much finished it with a few straggler pieces. So this I would say is anywhere from 6 to 8 people. This is a 14-inch board. For my business, my 12-inch board serves 4 to 6 people. The 15-inch board, I'm having a hard time remembering the number of people off the top of my head. And the 15-inch we say serves about 6 to 10. There's a little bit more variation in this. So with this being a 14-inch board, you're probably looking at about 8-ish people. And we have a 10-inch board that serves, we say 2 to 3 people. But of course, that depends on like this, I would say is 8 people for an appetizer portion. If you're serving it as a meal, it's probably closer to that 4 to 6 count. But also just depends on how hungry everyone is. And someone asked, how much does this cost me? This board, I'm trying to think. This board would probably cost me anywhere from, depending on what cheeses I choose. Of course, if you choose some of the more specialty cheeses, the price is going to go up. This I would say is probably going to cost me anywhere from 35, 40 to 55-ish, maybe 60. I also live in a very expensive part of South Florida, unfortunately. So the prices are probably, they might be a little bit different up there as far as pricing goes. And someone asked, Jane may have said this, how much do I charge? Was that a question? Yes, what would I charge? For this board, I would probably charge, since this is kind of this isn't a size that I sell, this board would probably be about, because this is actually probably closer to $60, $65 as far as cost of goods goes. So this I would probably charge about $120 because of the time to make it and the time to go get all the items and everything like that. Again, South Florida is a little bit of a different pricing than I would probably do if I still lived in Foley. That would be very different. But I typically do about double what it is because of the cost of the time to do it. And then I also offer delivery within like 30 minutes as well. And we do, this is just a little, we do include little honeycombs as well. That's a really cute addition to the board I forgot to add. And I just made all the honey fall. But yeah, I think that was all the questions. Did I miss any questions, or does anyone else have any other questions?
I think you
I
covered.
think you got them all, Melissa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Jeff.
That's okay. Yeah, I think you
Okay.
got all of them. We're a little over on time, but that is perfectly fine.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No. This is all recorded, so anybody that dropped out can come back and watch the end of it and everything. So.
Okay. All right, perfect. Well, thank you guys. This was really fun. I really enjoyed getting to kind of show you guys one of my fun hobbies.
Yeah, this was
Thanks,
really
Melissa.
great. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you guys.
Melissa.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.